Psalm 3. O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying of my soul, there is no salvation for him in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, and he answered me from his holy hill. I lay down and slept. I woke again, for the Lord sustained me. I will not be afraid of many thousands of people who have set themselves against me all around. Arise, O Lord, save me, O my God, for you strike all my enemies on the cheek. You break the teeth of the wicked. Salvation belongs to the Lord. Your blessing be on your people. The psalm is awesome. It's a psalm of David. And you might be familiar with the character David. David in the Bible is probably one of the most recognizable names behind Jesus and Moses, and there's good reason. Perhaps you've heard of the story David of Goliath, where a young David that was a shepherd boy defeated a gigantic military might known as Goliath. And just this awesome battle of this man, this young man, this boy really, seemingly without fear, challenging Goliath and defeating him in front of the two opposing armies. It's awesome. And part of the story is that David chooses to go out and do this. David does this because he has faith. He does this because he knows that even if he were to die, that's an important part, even if he were to die, God would still claim victory, because that is the God we serve. We serve a God that has never lost a battle. And so I love the story of Psalms, and I would, as we start to go through Psalm 3, I'd love to share with you my experiences and just invite you to think about the things that I've thought about, and hopefully this will grow your understanding of the Bible, and we can grow closer together in this. Okay, so what I want to do is I just want to go over 5 things that I've noticed in Psalm 3 that I think are really interesting, and we'll start with the first thing. Well, I'll list the 5 things for you right now. So for thing number 1, we're going to go over the background of the story. Then we're going to go over this word shield that appears here, just what that means. What does God shield us from? That's a pretty good question. And third, we're going to go over this word glory. This is a really cool word in Hebrew, and we're going to talk about that a bit. And then we're going to ask ourselves, who is God? What is this psalm telling us about God? What's this telling us about our relationship to God and God himself? And then we're going to end with how we're to pray in fear, because that's what this psalm is all about. It's about crying out to God in fear. So let's start at the beginning. We're going to talk about the background. So David, this guy I was talking about earlier, he used to be this incredibly great boy that actually became king because of what he did. He fought off Goliath. Saul recognized him. Saul took a really good, he loved David, and then at some point Saul turned against him because they saw that God's favor was on David and not it was on him, and David became king. It's a really interesting story, and for many years King David was this amazing character that did a bunch of really, really cool and awesome things, and I say really cool and awesome things because some of them are pretty graphic, but God uses David in pretty amazing ways to further his kingdom and to show God's power in the land. So David is this incredible guy that is absolutely all in on God. Nothing gets in between him and his worship of God. And this is just a great character. And this actually brings me to one of my points, is that King David is actually known as a man after God's own heart. And as far as I can tell, because of those words, King David is the closest thing we really get to Jesus, besides Jesus himself. And so King David is just an incredible character in the Bible. And he's writing these words. He's writing these words of fear, and that's very interesting. So this psalm is in response to David fleeing from his own son Absalom. And if you want to know more about that story is in 2 Samuel. But basically, Absalom kills somebody, kind of righteously actually, and David doesn't talk to him for several years, and then finally allows him back into his kingdom, and Absalom's very angry, creates a revolution, and starts chasing after David. So obviously very complicated. Second thing I wanted to talk about, so this word, this idea of a shield. David says here, God, you are my shield. And what does he say this in direct reference to? So let's take a look. This is very important to put this in context. Because a lot of times we'll pull these verses out of context and we'll use them, and that's fine, but we need to understand what context they're in order to really grasp what the author's saying. Verse 2, many are saying of my soul there is no salvation for him in God. Verse 3, but you, O Lord, are a shield about me, my glory and the lifter of my head. I cried aloud to the Lord, he answered on me on his holy hill. So what is a shield? Right? A shield is a defensive item you take into battle, right? You don't carry a shield around with you wherever you go. You take a shield with you when you're ready, when you know that you're going to be facing opposition and you're going to be in battle. And so from what I've read too, I spent a little time researching this, what shields meant during this time period, and if you didn't have a shield, you were at a huge disadvantage in battle. I mean, think about it. Not everybody, most people are using one-handed weapons. If you don't have a shield, if you don't have a way to deflect an attack, you're going to be in big trouble. Shield is a vital part of a soldier during this time. So David is calling out to God, telling him he's a vital part of what keeps him safe. And it's something that God is to David, it's something that he can take with him into his darkest and scariest moments, right? Into the moments that he's not sure if he's going to make it out alive. And it's not that this shield is 100% going to protect him from everything. That's not what shields do. But they're reliable, and they stay close to you, and they're something we bring with us in our darkest time. And I think that's what David's talking about here. So what will God protect you from? That's my point number 3, and that's a really good thing to think about, I think, here. Here's the hard truth, guys. God is not going to protect you from all physical harm. And I think this is really important to talk about right now, especially. God's job isn't to protect us from any bad thing that could ever happen to us, right? That's not his job. And the God of the Bible doesn't do that. I mean, we see here, David has a lot of bad things happening to him. David's family members have died, right? We look at Jesus, all the terrible things that happened to him. Look at Moses and Abraham. Every character, I would wager almost every character in the Bible has terrible things happen to them, even if they have strong faith in God. So strong faith in God doesn't protect you from physical harm, but it actually protects you from way more vital things. It protects what is absolutely vital to who you are, and that is your identity and who you are in God, right? So look at what people are saying about David. They're saying God will not deliver him. God's not going to answer his prayers. And that's what David, I think's real fear is that he's lost his connection with God. Because if you think back to young David, the very thing that made young David able to defeat Goliath wasn't his skill as a shepherd. That absolutely helped, right? He knew how to sling stones. But the very thing that was able to deliver Goliath into David's hands was his faith, right? And faith is the most vital part. It's not the outcome of defeating Goliath. It's David being able to just completely give himself over to God, whatever God wants to use him for. And that's what David's afraid of losing, right? Because that's who he is. And he's realizing now, right, that God is his everything. That's all he has left, right? At this point, he's running from his son. He's in shame. He's running from his own son. Like, how bad of a situation do you have to be in to be absolutely running from your own son, right? And David knows, like, he could absolutely be dead here. He could die. But the most important thing to him is his identity and who he is in God. And he knows that God is going to protect him, right? God is not a get-out-of-jail-free card to come back around, right? God is not this genie that's going to answer all of our prayers. And if we're in physical harm, he's going to deliver us. Will he sometimes? Absolutely. But that doesn't mean that's what's always going to happen. And that's not what David's saying here. God is David's glory, and God is David's sustainer. And that is what we need to take away from this. So this word glory, right? It's this word kavod, and it's a really awesome word. This is something I picked up from the Bible Project. If you've never watched their videos or listened to their podcasts, absolutely go do that. They're incredible. They've really strengthened my own faith and helped me learn things that I didn't learn in seminary. It's really high level, but very interesting videos. Like, anybody can watch them and get something out of them. They're awesome. Look up the Bible Project. So this word kavod, it means glory, right? And this word kavod also has a few other meanings. If you were with me when I preached on dinosaurs, I talked about ruach, and it's this breath, right? And sometimes Hebrew words don't just mean one thing, and they have a few different meanings. And that's not that they mean one. Oh, sorry about that, everybody. We'll go ahead and mute that. And it's not that they mean one more than the other. Sometimes they do, but it's just that we have to take into account all their different meanings. So this idea of glory, this word that we really only use in church, glory actually means like heaviness, weightiness. It's like this aura that surrounds you that is just, it goes out before you and people can just sense it. You know when something really awful or tragic is happening? Maybe you're aware of something like that now or not, but there's just this feeling that it just surrounds us, right? It's just always kind of there. We have this, before every conversation we go into, there's this presupposition that we're all going through this same thing. That weightiness is kind of like, it really describes, well, glory. And it's just this really cool word, right? So when we're talking about this glory, you need to remember that David used to have a lot of glory, right, for himself, right? When he defeated Goliath, when he was slaying tens of thousands of people, there were people praising David, right? And so David's name was glorified. He was this incredible person that if you were just in a room with him, you would feel his presence and you would know, man, this guy is serious. He's an amazing king, right? And that's what David's saying here is he doesn't have any of that anymore. Right? And maybe you have some of that. Maybe your job title, maybe who you are in your family, maybe how much money you have, maybe some talent you have is your glory. And that's what goes up before you. And I think what David's telling us here and what I'm telling you is that glory eventually will fade. One day you'll lose that glory. And if your glory isn't found in Jesus, if your glory isn't found in God, it's going to be gone. It's gone. And so what David's pointing to is saying, look, you're my glory, God. Sorry about that. I know that doesn't sound good in the mic, but God, you're my glory, and you are what sustains me. And so David is really doing an amazing thing right now because he's saying, no matter what happens, God, I'm going to be okay, right? You're going to deliver your own glory. Like, my identity is in you. The most vital parts about me you're going to protect because what you're protecting is your own glory, right? Because David's glory is God's glory, and that's what he's doing here. And I know it's kind of complicated, but basically what David's saying is that, God, you are my glory. So whatever happens, you're going to sustain me. And there's a really cool part in here about looking to the temple, and I put that in the study notes if you want to look more about that, but that's basically talking about sacrifice. And for Christians, that means way more than just reading this as a Jew. And so definitely look into that and in the study guide listed down below. So what does this psalm teach us? And I thank you for sticking with me through this. I hope this has been interesting to you. This psalm teaches us kind of really how to pray in fear. David is terrified right now. He's without sleep, we can see. He's running from his own armies, people that he probably used to have good relationship with him, people that he used to love. His son, he's running in total fear from this thing. And he's not sure if he's going to make it out. And he's actually okay with the idea of not making it out. And he's terrified, but he realizes that his glory is in God. And so if he doesn't make it out, God will still prevail. But that's not what this is about, right? So let's talk about how he actually goes through praying this, and maybe that will help us pray while we're dealing with fear in any part of our lives. So the first thing he does is he addresses God. He cries out to God, right? And this is very important to do in your own prayer. You might do it without even thinking about it, but I challenge you next time to really think about who you're talking to. Use words that mean something to you. Really quick little sermonette in here. God's name, Yahweh, is the best interpretation we have of that. But his title is Lord. So if you call him Lord, think about him as your king, as your Lord. And then God is what he is. He is a God, right? He is the God. He is the singular God. And so think about him as you use these words in those ways, just how incredibly powerful and how far his majesty spreads and just who he is. God's incredible. So think about that, who you're addressing, and that will really center yourself. Maybe even take a couple seconds with that. Maybe describe God in different ways. All-powerful, the healer, whatever works for you in praying for that. But address God, that's thing number one. Okay, the second thing he does is he shares his own distress, and this is where I really think we need to do better job of as the American church. I think we need to really honestly complain. A lot of times we think God doesn't want to hear our distress, and to that I say, have you ever read the Psalms? This entire book of the Psalms is not entire. I'd say a third of it is lament psalms, and this is all people complaining and crying out to God and sharing how they're feeling. They're not spending their whole time strategizing with God, telling him how to fix problems. What they're doing is they're just crying out and complaining, and God wants to know how we're feeling. God knows how to solve problems. He's doing it, right? He knows how to do that. What he wants from you is a relationship, and with that includes feelings, and that includes you being vulnerable. So spend the majority of your prayer doing that. If that's where your heart is, share that with God. Be angry. Be upset. Be happy. If you're joyful, be happy. Share your feelings with God. So that's the second thing he does. Third thing he does is he proclaims his confidence in God and his confidence of who he is in God. And that's really awesome too. So think about this, right? You're praying to God. You're crying out to God. You're giving him everything you're feeling. But don't forget that who your God is and maybe what he's done for you. So pray to God, tell him who he is. Remind God who he is. And this isn't because God has forgotten, but because it's going to help you remember who God is. Our God is the God that gave David the strength to defeat Goliath. Our God is the God that forgave David after he had an affair with Bathsheba, right? And had an illegitimate child. That's our God, right? The God of forgiveness. Our God is the God that delivered Moses and the Israelites out of Egypt, right? Our God is the God that sent Jesus down to die for us so that we could be with him for eternity. That is who our God is. Say those things in your prayer. Remember what those things are, because they're going to give you so much more power in just your daily life, remembering who your God is. It's incredible. I absolutely urge you to do that. So the fourth thing he does is he asks for deliverance. And you might remember me saying that we shouldn't focus all of our time on this, and that's true. And you might remember me saying that God doesn't deliver us from physical harm. That's not what he promises. And he doesn't promise deliverance from physical harm, but you should still pray for it. And what I mean is this: you're in a relationship with God. He knows what you want. Still ask for it. Ask for it, absolutely. God might deliver it in the exact way that you think he's going to, and he might not, right? And I just think you still need to be doing that, still need to be asking. God wants to be in that relationship with you. He might not answer you in the way that you want him to, but I promise you, he will answer you. So do that as part of your relationship. And the very last thing David does, he praises God. He looks at God and he praises him. And you know what? He accepts that no matter what is going to happen, God is going to win. God has never lost a battle, guys. Remember that. And God is always going to prevail. And because our glory, if your glory is God's glory, that means that when God wins, we all win. All right? Because what we want is God's dominion on earth. What we want is to bring the kingdom here, right? So we want God to win. And that's what David's saying here, is that no matter what happens, God's got this. God is going to prevail. Nothing is bigger or stronger than God. So that's it, guys. That's what I got out of Psalm 3. I hope you enjoyed that. This video ended up being much longer than I thought it would be, but I hope you enjoyed it. Please check out the study guide down below. Also, this really amazing thing, Madeline has made this song. Madeline and her sister have made this song that perfectly embodies Psalm 3. So listen to that, worship God with that, and check in with me. Comment down below, email me, text me, call me, whatever. Let's stay in community while we're not right next to each other. I love you all. I'm praying for you all, and we'll see you soon. Okay? Bye.